I was going to have us all do an Om, actually. Let's do that anyway. First, take a deep breath and let it go. Now we're going to take a deep breath and we're all going to share the sound of Om. Good morning. My name is Jack Doggett, and I'm serving as worship leader today. One thing I love about this congregation is how I feel I'm able to trust my heart to you. And I feel it back. So I want to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. And I want to take a moment to extend a warm welcome to everyone who's visiting us for the first time, either here or online. If you're joining us online, please fill out a visitor form in the link of the description. We would love to connect with you. To give you some idea of what we're all about, let me tell you about our mission. We say that here we connect bravely, deepen spiritually, embody justice, and always, always love. What we mean is that this community is inviting you into our shared time together today. But it's also inviting you into a way of life, a way of being in the world that may transform you. We want to grow as individuals and welcome more people into this community, and we want to help you in your personal dream of making this world and your life better. So, a bunch of announcements, lots going on. I have 3 invitations to share. On Saturday, May 18th, our religious education director, Rachel Alba, and Reverend David are leading a day-long retreat here on owning our religious past. Owning our religious past. It's a space for considering the gifts and challenges received from your religious community before this one. It's open to all members of our community with a special intention around serving current parents who desire to share spiritual depths with their children, but don't want their children to carry with them the challenges they received in their upbringing. Does that ring a bell with anybody? Second, on June 3rd through 7th, that's a week, our music director, Dr. Emily, and Reverend David will lead a week-long intensive workshop on worship leadership. Learn about the theory and theology of preaching. He was a professor of that at Mayville Lombard. Practice writing and speaking with authenticity, and develop a confidence being at home in your body and in your voice. There's a flyer posted outside with a QR code to get more information and to sign up. And finally, and very excitingly, the registration is open for our all-church retreat. We invite everyone to our all-church retreat, which is so much fun that it only happens every 2 years. This retreat is 2 nights from August 9th through 11th at the beautiful Highlands Ranch Retreat Center in Allens Park. There's a full slate of kid programming, a Lego-based welcoming activity, worship led by congregants, canoeing and paddleboating, and lots of time for puzzles, meals, singing, and connection within our beloved church community. So you can register now with this QR code. I'm so glad. These AV people are so sharp. Right here on cue. Or find the link on our church calendar on the website or the weekly email.
Each week when we gather, we light our chalice, just as 1,000 other congregations do each week around this country. It is a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist past, present, and future. It is a visible reminder of our interconnection. My name is Joe Polman, and I joined this congregation a little over a year ago. A key part of my journey here was my involvement in the First Unitarian Church of St. Louis. In the early 2000s, I joined there and co-led a covenant group with my spouse, Kate McQuaid. One aspect of our group's covenant was to practice deep listening. The way we did this came in a specific form that will be familiar to many of you. The practice of deep listening we aspired to do was a timed period of just having one person talk and others listen without verbalizing. It was okay to nod and give encouraging facial expressions, but this new to me practice involved not saying anything. At first, I found this difficult and actively resisted. I think I found it stilted because I believe in the importance of dialogue and had learned how to do something called active listening as an education researcher. Active listening, as I'd learned it, involves not just nods and encouraging facial expressions, but also giving lots of verbal affirmation, comments, or asking questions to show you're listening. Others in our group also struggled with just listening, but following our covenant, I learned that this kind of silent, deep listening brought a new kind of connection. I didn't have to think of what I was going to say at all. My only job was to take in the other person's experience and give it my absolute attention and sympathetic regard. The dialogue came later and had a greater level of depth. I found I got to know my fellow covenant group members in different ways. I'm grateful to my first UU church for helping me learn this form of listening. I've since had the opportunity to benefit from this kind of deep listening practice in many relationships, including here at UUCB. So I light this chalice in gratitude for our church community and our commitment to listen and connect.
It's good to be here with you. It's funny to be here with none of our choir who are over doing their music Sunday at our neighboring congregation, the Boulder Valley UU Fellowship. Their choir will join us here on the 19th. I'm not saying don't come to church next week, but definitely come to church 2 weeks from now. They sound really, really good. We come to church to listen, not just to the choir or music Sunday. We come to church to listen. To listen and remember the truths of living and dying and making a life that are hidden among the ordinary, everyday things. We come into this house bringing pain and sorrow and joy, and we place them together on an altar of our lives and say, these are the things that we're made of. Whatever the resume or LinkedIn profile or letters after your name, it is the joys and the pain and the sorrow that we are made of. That's what matters. That's what's real. We come into this house because this is a place of grace where we know automatically, just by walking in the door, it is certain that we will lose our way and fail to live up to our best values, and then we'll start over again. And nothing's gone wrong. It's because that's how people work. Always called towards our best selves, never getting there. We come together like rivers to a sea to pool our hopes and our dreams and to consider the deeper currents of our lives. And in that, we arrive not just to get our own needs met, but to create this space for each other. This is why our faith is abbreviated you, not me. Which is a ridiculous thing to say. But also, we come here to be silly, because that is also part of our lives. Silly and weary and despairing and hopeful. Come into this house bringing every bit of who you are, and don't leave any of it behind. In this house, you can be who you are and who you're called into becoming. We don't all say the same words or perform the same aspects. We don't all call this holy aspect of life by the same name. And in that diversity of theology is our strength, because whatever form our spiritual life takes, whatever words you use to describe that thing that is of the most importance to you, we believe that behind this diversity is unity. Our lives begin and end in mystery. Our universe is vast and we are tiny. And our spirituality is an individual path answering the call of love that we find in community. We walk down these personal roads that are unique to each one of us, guided by the wisdom of generations and the counsel of community and the deep listening that hears us into speech. We come because tending that inner flame of the Spirit, listening, looking for that compass tug that pulls us back towards love again, it's something we can't not do. Let's sing that into being, to grow our spirits and help to serve the world in community. Let's sing that in together. Will you rise in body or spirit? Let's stand together.
So as Reverend David said, the choir's gone, the chancel cats are gone, and you have me and Bill. And this morning, we're going to do a hymn, and it's not in any of the hymn books, and it's Stand By Me, but I think you all know it. So here we go. When the night has come, and the land is dark, and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, and the mountain should crumble to the sea, I won't cry, no, I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. Whenever you're in trouble, won't you stand by me? Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me, stand by me.
Sorry, you good. Thanks. Y'all sound good. All right, who would like to talk about the 1620s? Okay. We will then. Unitarian Universalists, Unitarians are directly descended, our sort of church lineage, from the colonizers who settled Massachusetts beginning in the 1620s, pushing out the native people who lived there, the Wampanoag and Pequot and Narragansett and Mohegan. And this isn't a story about colonization, but it's worth, when we talk about history, being honest about the whole of what that history entailed. This is a story about a little town in Massachusetts. This one town, Dedham. Who's been to Dedham? This is a surprisingly large number of people have been to Dedham, which is a sort of an unremarkable suburb of Boston. I apologize, Dedhamites. All right, so in the 1620s, most of these little towns in the Bay Area are settled by people who'd all come from the same place in England. But this one town, Dedham, has about 30 families who have come from all different parts of England, so they don't know each other ahead of time. And this is the story of how they came to form, it's a true story, of how they came to form a town and a church. This is a story about our ancestors who would have, if my calculations are right, been your grandparents, 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 I think. They start, these 30 families who don't know each other, by forming a town government to figure out who owns what land for farms and houses. All these houses clustered together, and then the fields around. And they had work to do. They built pens for their animals, and they planted their crops, and they built their houses, and unpacked or pegged together their furniture, until finally they had done enough to think about founding a church. They'd been working so hard, they hadn't really gotten a chance to know each other deeply. They'd been much too busy. In other words, except for the fact that they almost all were farmers, they were very much like present-day suburbanites, of which I am one, many of whom, especially in this area, may have moved from somewhere else and not really know their neighbors very well. So they set up a series of weekly neighborhood meetings. And they talked and they talked and they talked for a whole year because they wanted to start well. Meetings were held every Thursday at several houses in order, in rotation, and anyone who wanted to was welcome to attend. And they didn't start this process that they had of wanting to found a church. They did not start by talking about the Bible or even the church. They started by talking about how they wanted their town to work, how their town government was going to work, what the expectations of each other were as, I guess it wasn't citizens then, but as people sharing the space together. They did that because they knew that in order for the church to work, it had to live inside a wider society where concerns for justice and peace and reasonable laws could all be made real. So after all this talk of civil society, they began to edge towards talking about forming a church. And their first question was, are we as a group of random people even qualified to form a church? They said, are we qualified to assemble together and confer? And their answer went like this. They said, if in the judgment of charity we seem to be and think we are acting out of genuine, deep religious love, then we're qualified to form a church. We don't need anybody else to tell us we're qualified. We just have to answer that call. And the next question they had was, well, if we can just meet like this as neighbors on Thursday nights, isn't this enough? Do we really have to build a thing that we go to on Sundays? They did not put it like that. They were much more serious about this. But the answer was, no, this Thursday evening thing is too casual. If we really take seriously this invitation to live into our deepest love, then we have to intentionally form a community that we get to practice this thing in. And their central conclusion, after weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of discussion, was this. They said members of this new free church should be joined in a covenant of religious loyalty to the spirit of love. Free church, meaning you didn't have to be part of this thing if you didn't want to. You get to choose. Joined, meaning joined each to each other by a covenant, by promises, commitments that we make about how we're going to treat each other and what we're about. And despite everything that has changed since that time, since your grandparents, I think, despite all the things that we believe differently, despite the fact that we use different texts, we say different words, we sing different hymns, they would have been outraged by a guitar. Despite all of this difference, still this is how we do church, a free church, joined by the promises that we make to each other and a loyalty to the spirit of love. People come here freely, I hope. Tell me if you didn't. Actually, children, that doesn't count. Come here freely, promised to each other to be a community of kindness that puts love at the center of living. And we still practice that week after week in the covenant that we make to each other.
And as Reverend David eloquently stated, our covenant is a promise we make to each other and how we will be together in community. It is simple, it's also demanding. So in person and online, will you rise and join together and speak it aloud? We gather in fellowship to speak truth to each other, to reach out and touch one another, to care with each other, and to seek the truth divine. So be it.
Join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation. Again, maybe with a sigh, I think. Spirit of life and love, which we call by many names. We know it in different ways. We understand it differently. We acknowledge that each of us has fallen short of the person we hope to be. Each of us has started forward and stopped, made wrong turns on the right road. Each of us has spoken an unkind word and closed a door and burned a bridge. And we say that, we name it, we remember it out loud, not because we are bad and broken, but because this is what it is to be a person in the world. All of us imperfect. None of us pretending to be perfect. And because each of us also has begun again when things are hard. Each of us has built a bridge and opened a door. Each of us has made the brave and difficult choice, not always and forever, the brave and difficult choice to speak the truth to ourselves, to each other. In this hour, our prayer and our hope is not for endless perfection forever, but just to be called back home to ourselves again and again. To remember that this spirit of love, this love that we follow, doesn't call only the perfectly qualified, but qualifies the called. May we begin again and be together in silence for a few moments. Amen. This table in front of the pulpit has a tray and a bowl. The tray is filled with ordinary, extraordinary dirt. It is earth formed by 1,000 generations of cottonwoods and aspen leaves, watered by snowmelt and thunderstorms, burned by fire, mulched by buffalo and prairie dogs. This is the land of the Ute and Arapaho people. This is sacred earth. And the bowls have stones from Boulder Creek, little pieces of the mountains, with their rough edges smoothed by time and water and motion. And in a few moments when you come forward, you'll take a stone and let that stand, let that symbolize, let that embody your joy or your sorrow, all those things that you carry with you that sometimes seem too much, and place it in the earth, resting in this web of life larger than any of us. And together we make a landscape of our inner lives, 100 private hopes and fears made visible, no longer alone. When the music begins, for those of us gathered in person, I invite you to come forward, start with the back and the windows and then the front. But I'll place a few stones to start. First, with love and care for Rosemary Londorf, who writes, "My father, John Fowler, aged 95, passed away Wednesday night at home as he wished, peacefully. May he rest in peace." And Rosemary, we hold you in deep love and care. Place a stone also for all those protesting for peace this week and the right to lift up their voices and make that urgent need known. Stone also to remember and face the violence and the horror in Gaza. The reality is, whatever the accounting is during war, whoever started it, whoever's owed anything, I don't know how to balance any of that. But I know that there is no such thing as war without atrocity, and I face that reality plainly. For all the blessings and all the concerns that we carry, may we hold this space with love, and please come forward as you feel moved.
You and I must make a pact. We must bring salvation back. Where there is love, I'll be there. I'll reach out my hand to you. I'll have faith in all you do. Just call my name and I'll be there. I'll be there to comfort you, build my world of dreams around you. I'm so glad that I found you. I'll be there with a love that's strong. I'll be your strength. I'll keep holding on. Let me fill your heart with joy and laughter. Togetherness is all I'm after. Whenever you need me, I'll be there. I'll be there to protect you. Unselfish love that respects you. Just call my name and I'll be there. I'll be there to comfort you, build my world of dreams around you. I'm so glad that I found you. I'll be there with a love that's strong. I'll be your strength. I'll keep holding on. If you should ever find something new, I know it better be good for you. 'Cause if it isn't, we'll be there. Don't you know, yeah, we'll be there. We'll be there. Just call our name and we'll be there. Just look over your shoulders, honey. We'll be there. We'll be there. Whenever you need us, we'll be there. Don't you know, baby, we'll be there. We'll be there. Just call our name and we'll be there.
We'll get there. Show me the patterns of your church organization, and I'll show you what the people of the church find worthiest of their loyalty as church people. That's the minister and historian Alice Blair Wesley asking the question, offering us a sort of a guide rope to clip onto before climbing down into 4 centuries of history. So, back to the 1600s. Show me the patterns of your church organization, and I'll show you what the people of the church find worthiest of their loyalty. In 1637, in Dedham, Massachusetts, a church whose theology would later become Unitarian. It's a UU church. Oh, I missed it. The whole slide from earlier when I was telling you the story, that is the Unitarian Church of Dedham, the very same one. You probably figured that out. But just to make that absolutely clear. In 1637, our ancestors gathered to set up a way of organizing themselves that we still follow. And they didn't set up a system of bishops like churches in England. They didn't set up a system of priests who were in charge and had special authority. They did not set up a system of elders where some small group was the ones trusted to make all the decisions for everyone else. Instead, they wrote, "No union of many persons into one body can be made without mutual consent or some kind of covenant," which is a surprisingly modern thing until you really start to think about, well, who did they actually include in 1637 of who got to be entitled to be a person? Setting that aside, no union of persons can be made without mutual consent into one body. That is, we are organized, we are united, we are a community because we agree freely to become a community. That kind of thinking was common sense a century and a half after they wrote it, when the Continental Congress declared that government derives its just authority from the consent of the governed, still with a very narrow sense of who got to give consent. But in Dedham in 1637, our ancestors who formed that church they never said, God has told us exactly how we are supposed to organize ourselves. Instead, they referred to biblical stories and New Testament texts that suggested early Christian churches, the earliest Christian churches, were united by covenant, by the agreement of their members, rather than divine authority imposing a certain structure. In 1637, they said to each other, in essence, we're organizing ourselves this way because this is the common sense way that people ought to organize themselves. Lay people in one ancient land, says a historian, had embraced the covenant of the free church because it fits the nature of human beings as individuals and as social creatures. And once you grasp that idea, that the spirit of love may reign in a free church of equal members, making decisions together, discerning the path ahead together, the truth of that appears self-evident. So what then? Okay, if that's the system of government and organization, what is the covenant, the promise, the commitment that those early congregational churches were making to each other? We will not stay in the 17th century for this whole sermon. But stick with me a minute, because the Dedham Church covenant turns out to be really long and convoluted, and I'm going to share instead a similar one that reads better from the Salem Church, also Unitarian, in 1629. They say this: "We covenant with the Lord and with one another, and do bind ourselves in the presence of God to walk together in all his ways, according as he is pleased to reveal himself unto us in his blessed word of truth." We should probably unpack that a little bit. None of those words are spelled the way that you would expect them to be anymore. I think that the first word here is the most important word, we. We are making this promise, they said 400 years ago. We're making this promise in front of God, but we're making it to each other. The commitment we're making is among peers, among community. And the thing we're promising is to walk together, not to stay in one place and be perfect and fixed and done, but to go about living life, the whole of our lives, together in community, individually in the world, following the model of how to live that was revealed by God, yes, back then, they're Christians, but even more than that, it's revealed unto us. It's not revealed unto one person who's going to direct everybody else how to do it. The most important word is us. The us matters. Even 4 centuries ago, they believed they had to figure it out together, what that meant. And it wasn't self-evident and obvious what to do. And they weren't going to figure out once and forever, here's how to be faithful to the spirit of love, we're done. Dedham, Salem, 125 of these other New England churches became Unitarian in theology in the early 1800s, but the way they organized themselves, the way we organize ourselves today, is still the way we did it 400 years ago, by mutual promise in a free church. In Dedham's long covenant, they pledged to each other, not in this language, they pledged to each other, we're going to figure it out together in community. One historian says there's no talk in that covenant of miracles or anything hard to believe, except for a great deal of talk about how strangely and wonderfully love works. Love deepens in committed religious relationships in the free church. Deep love and careful social shared reasoning. It evokes loyalty to love's end, which is freedom, meaningful freedom. Freedom within the boundaries defined by a high degree of tender caring for each other, and within which all are fully included as equals. The highest loyalty was answering the call of love. Show me the patterns of your church organization, and I'll show you what the people of the church find worthy of their loyalty. The Unitarian minister John Haynes Holmes, who co-founded the NAACP and the ACLU, in the first half of the 20th century, he served a congregation called Community Church in New York City. And he tells this story of why the church is named that. And as incomprehensible as any individual thing he preached would have been 300 years earlier in Dedham, the enterprise, the shared task that they were in together would have been perfectly sensible. He says the community church does the revolutionary thing of avoiding exaltation of itself. It makes the community the primary thing and the church secondary. Emerson once said that the Bible might be destroyed from cover to cover without loss, for in such a case, men would write it again out of their inspired souls. Similarly, may we say of the churches that they might be destroyed without loss, for if this were done, people would straight away rear new choices to give voice to their needs and service to their ideals. Indeed, writes John Haynes Holmes, indeed, there would be a gain in this process in the end. For in place of institutions which represent ideas and methods which have not died out with the generations but should have, we would instead have institutions with the instinct of this time, and vital, therefore, with this time's hopes. The community church is proud of the fact it doesn't come down out of heaven, but up from the earth, rejoices in the assurance that its roots are deep in the soil of human hearts, acknowledges that from its people it draws its life, and to the people it must return life. And despite the difference in our name, we might claim the same, because loyalty to love is at the center. Whatever our theologies, whatever form or shape they take, to take love seriously as the center of our lives, that's the work, and the way we organize ourselves is an expression of that, a community united by the promises that we make to each other. Occasionally, I'll say to newcomers who are in our new member class, if the church burned down on a Saturday night, we would be here the next day, grieving and mourning and comforting and singing and planning. Maybe not a whole year of meetings, but a lot of meetings. And what comes next? We're actually going to do this right now, in the year ahead of us, as we plan what comes next for this building. But the point is, in a voluntary organization, we choose to be here. The heart of the thing is relationship. We know each other and are known by each other. Elders and babies and working folks, and it feels so heavy and portentious to say, to be part of this church community is to invest your life in relation. That sound to me, maybe that sounds lovely to you. It sounds heavy to me. It sounds like that's a lot. But here's what I mean. Also, on Friday night, a few days ago, we had community night, the first Friday of every month. We have this potluck, and we do different things. It was game night, pulled out all the board games. And by about 7:30, I am sitting at a table in there and there's 50 other adults and kids and babies. And we found a game of bananagrams and started playing, and then realized it's the Spanish version of bananagrams, and had together to figure out what do we do with eñas and double L's and so on. And I'm looking over at the heads of people who are playing these different games, many of whom I don't think even knew each other before that evening. I'm looking out across the murmur of some of you were there. You can say this better than me too. The murmur of the room. There's a hum of the room when people like being there together. And on the far side is the 16-month-old who is moving at top speed, which is fast. It is faster than me fast. The 16-month-old on their way, and there's one parent sort of keeping a general eye out, and there, trailing the 16-month-old is a preschooler or two who are delightedly chasing after this little human who they're going to herd around the room. That's what invest some portion of your life into these relationships means. It's not this heavy, ominous thing. It's playing together and laughing together. It's figuring out what to do with a set of bananagrams that has no K's in it. And it's simple, and also, I think that this thing is countercultural. We move through a world that preaches hyper-individualism. And we in this community say we become ourselves in community. You grow a soul in community. You grow as a person in community. And there's a setup in the world outside of these walls, not even outside these walls, a setup in the expectations we carry around with us moving through the world, that we are supposed to be isolated and separated and have everything perfectly together. And we break that silence and find places to speak that truth and know and be known. And whether you've been a member here for weeks or decades and officially, formally signed the membership book, just like they did in the 1600s, or you are here and know yourself to be a part of this community, that's the commitment that you're making. And no matter how many days it's been for you, we're all going to forget that commitment and do it badly sooner or later. Each of us are going to retreat back in our shells during some dry season in our lives. Each of us are going to be hurting too much to do that connection sometimes. Covenant isn't once and done. Covenant is not like, do you get the, like when your phone upgrades the operating system, you have to accept a new user agreement, and you scroll through this thing reading none of it until you get to the check mark? Yeah, that's not what a covenant is. In the same way that vows in a wedding ceremony are not a thing to check off and ignore. The point of them, the point of doing them, is not to say them in that moment, but to live into them imperfectly, because it will not be perfect, in however many days are to come. When we welcome new members into this community, sometimes we say, look, neither churches nor their members are perfect. And if you hang around long enough, one of two things, in fact, definitely both of two things will happen. Eventually, this community will disappoint you, or you will disappoint this community. And it's not that what happened isn't important. It is. It matters. What's most important is what comes next. In a covenanted community seeking right relationship, you face the hurts that you cause to each other, all of us, and take responsibility and accountability and make amends and repair. That's how you make a community. We have two different covenants in this community, one that we say together each week, the one we said together already that explains what we're about. We gather in fellowship to speak truth to each other, to reach out and touch one another, to care with each other, and to seek the truth divine. So be it. That's, I think, answering the call of love. That means gathering and speaking truth with each other, connecting deeply and vulnerably with each other, making each other's joys and cares our own, and searching for a deeper, a clearer, more embodied experience of what is true and good and right, never with the expectation we're going to figure it out once and forever and be done changing. And there's a second covenant, too. Because about 17 years ago, the need for a little bit more clarity got real sharp and present. Some of you were here then. 17 years ago, we were emerging from a period of intense conflict. And this congregation, up from the bottom, in good 4th century old fashion, up from the bottom, crafted a covenant of respectful relationships, which begins by saying our spiritual health and growth requires our best efforts to maintain respectful relationships, especially when we encounter conflict, which correctly is not if we encounter conflict, but when. And it makes commitments like I'll listen to others with attention and empathy, recognizing that it is as important to understand as to be understood. I'll speak honestly and directly with care and compassion, even though I don't want to, and I know that you are wrong and I'm right. That's not in the text, but I think it's implied, right? Because this is how we do with each other when things are difficult. This is the commitment we make to each other, and we're still figuring it out and living into it, getting better at it. Our healthy congregation team has spent this year digging into it, learning more, thinking about how do we deepen the skills to do this better across the whole congregation. Because covenant is commitment. It's not once and done. It's the living into the thing that matters. Just like our 9 times grandparents, our work together is an expression of our theology together, not a dour, solemn task, but a joyful invitation to keep on asking, what does it mean now, today, in this place, to answer the call of love? Amen. Let's sing that together. Sing it together. Will you rise in body or in spirit?
When we were picking the music, we had to follow the themes of covenant and commitment, which is not that easy with other music. However, I will say that I think I heard Reverend David say, answering the call to love at least 3 times in his sermon just now. So we're on point. But it is 10:14 in the Teal hymnal, and actually, the original title was Standing on the Side of Love, but the author has actually changed it to Answering the Call of Love to be more inclusive and less ableist. So, and we're doing it with a guitar, so it's a little bit hard. We're going to do our best. All right. The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love. Awesome job.
This month, our offering goes to the Boulder Area Sanctuary and Immigration Coalition, known as BASIC, clever name. Fred, would you come up and tell us a little bit about who they are and why we should support them?
One of the other hats I wear around here is as the representative from UUCB to the steering committee for BASIC. And last week I sat down and started to write and think about how we got here and the work that has been done by this community on specifically on this topic of immigration. When I finished, I had about 5 pages. With the help of David, it's down to 1. I'll send that other one to the archives. But just to remind us of our history, it was back in the fall of 2011 that a group of us here at UUCB got together at the urging of Kelly Dignan. She was just starting her ministerial internship with us, and we called ourselves the UUCB Immigration Task Force. And we started to learn and plan and connect with the others around the community on issues concerning immigration justice. The work deepened in 2015 when we called Reverend Kelly Dignan to be our minister. And at that time, we reconfirmed our commitment to the immigration justice. With 6 other local churches, we formed the Boulder Community Sanctuary Coalition, or BCSC, with a steering committee made up of representatives from each of the congregations involved. We promoted monthly attendance at the vigils, which were being held at the ICE Detention Center in Aurora. And we were also keeping track of the various persons around the state of Colorado who are in asylum and sanctuary from deportation. There were several of them around Colorado at that time. In 2017, with lots of congregational communication and discussion, and eventually a vote of the whole congregation, we declared UUCB to be a sanctuary church. And from the communities in that BCSC, over 200 volunteers stepped forward to assist us with the many small details of managing this operation. These volunteers are also trained in how to respond should La Migra come calling. We locked the church, we installed a video surveillance system, we borrowed furniture, constructed a makeshift shower, and waited. And just before Christmas 2017, Ingrid Encalada moved from Sanctuary at Foothills Unitarian in Fort Collins to UUCB. She did this to be closer to her extended family and to be reunited with her two boys, Bryant and Annabelle. For 4 years, the whole family lived here at UUCB. And, this is a spoiler alert, next Sunday, Mother's Day, Ingrid and her whole family will be joining us for services. So that'll give you a chance to catch up. Meanwhile, after Ingrid left us, we've kept this group, this BCSC group, together. We've renamed ourselves BASIC, the Boulder Area Immigration and Sanctuary Coalition. We converted to becoming a 5013C, or C3, I think it is. And we continue to do this same work on immigration justice. And speaking for the BASIC Steering Committee, we certainly are grateful to the support that we receive from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. Thank you.
So I invite you to give as generously as you are able to the ushers who are passing the baskets now. If you're online, you can use the QR code, or if you're a techie and know how to do it, there's a QR code right there. You can scan your little camera and go from there. May our gifts be used to enact justice, bringing peace and love to the Boulder community.
Back east today, say, leaving home most any day, headed out of that old Dust Bowl to the California line. Across the desert sands they go, headed out of that old Dust Bowl, and think they're headed for the Sugar Bowl. But here's what they find: the police at the port of entry say, you're number 14,000 for today. If you ain't got that do-re-mi, boy, you ain't got that do-re-mi, then you better go back to beautiful Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Kansas, Tennessee. California's a garden of Eden. It's a paradise to live in or see. But believe it or not, you won't find it so hot if you ain't got that do-re-mi.
To live into our values, to answer the call of love, to figure out what that means. Will you rise in body or in spirit? We'll close in song.